Mr. President. My question is to the Treasurer. Mr. Treasurer, days after the election of anarcho-capitalist Javier Milei as President of Argentina in 2023, you told the House you were, quote, quite a student of the Argentinian economy. You and your backbench were dismissive of Milei, but no one's laughing now. Free market capitalism is making Argentina great again, and now the world's biggest economy, the United States, has embraced Mileism and set up their own Department of Government Efficiency. Mr. Treasurer, New South Wales has $160 billion in gross debt. New South Wales has negative GDP growth on a per capita basis, while Argentina is now soaring. What specific economic indicator would it take for this government to conclude that Milei, Trump, Musk and, yes, Ruddick have been right about basic economic principles, and that your policies are a long march to the old Argentina?
Well, I thank the member for his question and his rather vivid imagination. I've got to say, every time the Honourable John Ruddick gets up, he's like one of those old-school 19th century preachers. Repent, calling on all of us to repent for the last 150 years of social progress that we've engineered from here, the Legislative Council of New South Wales. But I've got to say, it's not every day one gets to hear Milei, Trump, Musk and our own Ruddick mentioned in the same breath. I say this is the Libertarian equivalent of assembling the Avengers. That is what they're doing. And I have to say, if Trump here is Captain America and Musk is Iron Man and Milei is Bruce Banner, then our John Ruddick is definitely Hawkeye. Definitely there with his arrow, ready to shoot at every form of government waste he sees. But he's right to say that I did once, and I still do, describe myself as a student of the Argentinian economy. But I confess, I didn't realise I'd end up cast as an understudy of an economic telenova as epic as this one, I have to say. Just to inject a small dose of reality. I was perusing the IMF World Economic Outlook recently, and I couldn't help notice, I actually do have a standard Argentinian economy note in my folder now. I have to say, I keep it on track. I keep it on track of all the issues. I always ask, what's going on in Argentina? And I have to say, when the member extols the great virtue of the Argentinian economy, it really depends on where you're coming from. If you happen to be poor in Argentina, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. If you happen to be middle class, it's quite awkward. But his member is quite right to say that if you happen to be rich, the Argentinian policies are doing very well. But nevertheless, Argentina's debt to GDP ratio hit an astonishing 155.4% in 2023, the highest since 2002 when it reached 147.2%. That debt spike that the member says we shouldn't be worried about coincides with inflation in Argentina having peaked at 211.4%. And while inflation might now be easing, prices in Argentina are still doubling year on year on year. And so to the extent to which the member is calling for an Argentinian approach, I prefer inflation more 2 to 3% than the sort of 8% that Argentina is accustomed to. Now, as for the United States' newly minted Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk, I have to say I did see Mr. Milei present Mr. Musk with a chainsaw last week. I was wondering where Mr. Ruddick was in that conference, whether he was there or not, but I would simply say Elon Musk's Doge is an example of what we should not be doing here in New South Wales.
The Treasurer's time.
I would like to take note of the Treasurer's comment that Elon Musk's Doge is an example of exactly what we should not be doing in New South Wales. The Doge is the United States Department of Government Efficiency. The US government today has $36 trillion in debt. Under the Biden administration, that debt was increasing by about $1 trillion every 100 days. That debt was an existential crisis. Many great nations have imploded because of a public debt crisis. Public debt crises are caused by politicians who prioritise winning office over sound policy. The mighty American economy was on track to a financial crisis. It may still well be, but President Trump and Elon Musk are applying the only remedy that can turn the ship around. That remedy is cutting spending in a massive manner. and cutting taxes in a massive manner, and cutting regulations in a massive manner. The people will flourish when the politicians are less powerful. Everyone knows that governments are wasteful and inefficient, but what the Doge has so far exposed is that there is an enormous amount of outright theft. When Joe Biden passed the Orwellian-named Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden White House ended up with around $500 billion in their private kitty that they could dole out to their mates. So their mates went and set up endless institutions and organisations and NGOs, all with the word climate change in it. And then they were showered with public funds and all their mates got paid huge salaries. This was just the beginning of the theft. It reminds me of Cato the Elder 2,000 years ago when he said, "Thieves of private property pass their lives in chains. Thieves of public property in riches and luxury." Ever since 9/11, Western governments have abandoned prudent fiscal restraint. So it is distressing to hear the Treasurer ridicule the Doge. I can only conclude that he either thinks, one, the New South Wales budget has no waste and inefficiency and so there's nothing to cut, or two, the Treasurer approves of endless waste and inefficiency. Either way, the debt hanging over New South Wales and stagnant growth is here to stay until this Parliament takes a sharp turn towards fiscal sanity and looks to the great Javier Milei of Argentina for inspiration. That day is inevitable. The only question is whether we have to descend to pre-Milei levels of economic failure and poverty before we come to our senses.